Hello. How's everyone doing?
Hi, Diana.
Hey, hey. All right. People in.
Hello.
Hello, hello. I've got the camera on. Let me switch webcam. Keep switching. Let me see now. There we go. Admit everyone. All right. So as you come in, remember to sign in with your second computers, those of you who are doing that. Here we go. You know what, I missed that when this was in real life, as people came in, we'd have some chit chat or how are things going? And it kind of, the dearth of chit chat, the dearth of knowing people is one of the things I'm noticing I'm missing about Zoom, but oh well. Hi everyone. Hi Ali. Hi everyone who's saying hi on the chat. Go ahead and keep doing that. I'm in a nostalgic mood today. I'm in a really Zoom again kind of mood. I've had way too many meetings this week, beyond classes, but actual meetings. Yeah, and it's kind of nice to be with people. I haven't been with people in so long. So anyway, if someone who's out there wants to turn on their camera, oh, Robert, thank you. Otherwise, I'm speaking to a computer, like I'm musing into my own brain. But when I see even one person, it helps me feel like I'm with you guys. So hi. Don't feel bad if you can't. I'm not asking you to do it if it makes you uncomfortable, but if you can, it helps to not feel like I'm talking to a black grave.
I have noticed if I have my camera on, my computer gets kind of heated, and so
it does. So I'm not saying you need to keep it on all the time, but maybe a little bit just to say hi. I said, it's so interesting what a difference it makes to know that I'm not speaking to the void, to see someone out there. But so yeah, you can turn it on and off or not turn it on at all if you don't want to. But
that's one of the reasons I use 2 devices.
Yeah,
that helps too.
So you can run Zoom on your computer.
Right.
Running Dreamweaver on the other. No, that and the facility of being able to actually not have your whole screen taken up by Zoom. So it's a great idea either way.
Yeah, I have a question.
If you've ever had to run a meeting or teach a class and have had the experience of having blank, it's like, am I talking to someone? Sorry. If you have any compassion for us teachers, you might remember to now and then show up and say hello.
I'm hearing that complaint a lot from the teachers, that they feel.
It's not so much as a complaint, it's just that it's a need. We teach because we connect with you. I teach because I connect with people. And it's I can become more of a robot if I see no one in front of me than if I see people going, oh, it's too fast or too slow, or I see people struggling. I kind of have an idea of what's going on. If not, it feels like I'm missing that feedback of how am I doing as a teacher as well, Yeah. Anyway, but you guys can tell me on chat, oh, this is great, this is not, explain this better, and then that'll give me the feeling too.
I have a question.
Yes.
So we had all the files in our root folder. So how important it is that the first file has to be indexed and second has to be an image folder in the root folder? Or does it really matter?
It's a great question. There's 2 parts to that. How important is it that the first file be called index? Very. That one has to be called index.
So, but it has to take place first in the root folder? Can it be like an image folder and then HTML
Yeah, it
file?
could be that you're still creating your In fact, your index file might not be your first thing, and that would make sense in this situation. And that, as I said, I think I've said in the past, you don't start creating your website by creating an index file. You start creating your website by first planning it, creating sketches and wireframe and choosing your images and things like that. So it would be very possible that your folder for your website starts by you putting all the images in there. And then when you're ready to actually build the website itself, then that, you know, you might have done work in Photoshop for all the images that are going to go in there. You might have created a plan, a sketch. You might have created actually your assets already in Photoshop, and all of that will be there already. And then you go, okay, it's time to start building it, and you create your index file. So the order in which you create them doesn't matter. What does matter is the fact that once you incorporate those assets into that index file or into any of the pages, you know, of your web page, that they all be in that same root folder. So the root folder is crucial, and to have all your content and your images and your text and your links and your logos and video, whatever that is going to be in that website needs to be in the root folder. But the order in which they appear does not matter at all. No.
So let's say I have a root folder and I have an image folder in it. So I have 5 images in that image folder, but the one of the image is outside the image folder, but inside. Can
you stop for a second? Ali is having a question because she can't hear me, and I wanted to send her a link, but hold on, because she can't hear me. So give me a sec. I'm gonna post a link for her to get to tech support. So 1 second while oh, darn it. I'm posting the tech support link, but its problem is that they're up till 4. So give me a sec. Okay, so the reason I posted that in the chat, if you see that, it's for everyone. They had a planned schedule of 9 to 4 p.m. But if more people use it, they would be staying longer. So I don't know if they've changed it and they do leave at 4 p.m. Maybe someone is there until 5:30 now. I should check, or maybe they just wait to see who's showing up. But the thing is that I posted that number because in between class, if they can't help you right now, then make sure to go to them Monday to Friday and ask them to help you with things like sound and stuff. If you've had that issue before, it's not the first time. You're going to keep having that issue. So maybe they can help you figure out why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay. So anyway, copy that link down, put it somewhere in your notes and your places. I keep putting it in the chat, but then when the chat closes, you don't have it. So make a point of having that link somewhere that you can just click on. Send it to yourself as a text message, send it to yourself as an email, do something that way that you can retrieve it and then click on the link and get there. Okay. So I just wanted to add that. So sorry for interrupting you, Mira, but since Ali was chatting with me, telling me she couldn't hear me, I figured I'd put that in there because she couldn't hear me saying what I was saying. So anyway, Mira, please continue with what you were saying.
Oh, so my question was, like, if I have a root folder and then I have an image folder in the root folder, and one of the, I had 3 images in the image folder, and one of the images outside the image folder, but still in the root folder, would that be confusing for the web?
It would, it's just bad form. As long as you don't move it out of the way, it's not necessarily a problem. But then if you do decide to just put it in the right place, then you might have broken some links you created to it. So, you know, because if you finally go, this image shouldn't be floating, it should be in the images folder, and you put it in there, say from your Finder, you just grab it and drag it into the images folder. your HTML file doesn't know you did that. So when you try to see that file, it'll have a question mark. It won't know that it's moved. If you do it from inside of Dreamweaver, from that files panel, and drag it in there, then Dreamweaver knows and goes and changes the link to that photo. So as long as you do it inside of the panel that says files, you can do that. But if you just kind of, next week open up your folder and go, what's this image doing here? Let me drag it into its right place. Then all the code written for it will just go look for it where it was before, and it won't know where to find it. So that's why it's good to establish and putting things in the right place from the beginning. Otherwise, be aware that if you move it, you need to go and fix that link. You can click on that link again and reset the link. You can do that, or do it inside of Dreamweaver where Dreamweaver does it for you. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's problem only for HTML and not for CSS?
It's only for HTML because it's the HTML that has the link of where to find it, right? So CSS just has to modify how it looks or doesn't look. But if HTML can't find it, CSS can't act. So I mean, it affects both of them, but in reality, it really only affects HTML because the HTML is saying, go and make my picture of the oceans move to the left, is what CSS says. But if HTML can't find the picture of the waves, then CSS won't be able to act upon it. But CSS doesn't care where it is. It's HTML that needs to go find it by saying, it's in this folder, and it goes, and oh, no, the folder's not here anymore. Can't find it, puts a little question mark. So at that point, the question mark, CSS can make the question mark appear on the right side, but it's still a question mark. It's not the photo of the waves, So it is about it's HTML that needs to find and know where the link, where that image is.
So if I had introduced HTML from the beginning, what that particular image is, then it will find it there.
So say that one more time.
So from the beginning, if I introduce where the image is to HTML, then it will be fine. It will find it just at that place. It doesn't matter whether it's in the image folder or not.
Doesn't matter if it's what?
It's in the image folder or not.
Yeah, if you have sprinkled images and HTML files all at one level and never organize them, the website will still find them. It's just, messier, but it would still find them as long as you don't move them from there. It's harder for you to look at all your files and distinguish between an image and a logo and a color and a text and an HTML, but so it's just a matter of neatness. And does it make a difference to the browser? No, as long as it's where you tell it is, it'll be fine.
Okay, great, thanks.
It's more of a form over function than an actual, something being tidy or untidy, being easier to find or not. That's really all it is. Okay, great questions, Mira. Thank you. And I can tell, by the way, by asking these questions that you've been really trying and practicing and thinking about things. So that's what I want. I want people to be trying stuff, because when you try things on your own, then these questions come up. I just tell you where to put it. You just put it where I tell you. That's it. But then when you try to do it on your own, you go, wait a minute, why was this all about? And then you can come back and ask questions. So thank you, Mira, for doing that.
Thanks.
Leland asked to make an announcement. So Leland, are you available? I don't know what the
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Tell me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let everybody know there is a competition being held by HubSpot. I don't know if many of you know what HubSpot is, but it's a company that deals a lot with like marketing and online sort of e-learning stuff. They're hosting a competition.
So people can understand. Look at the chat, HubSpot. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I think you sent it to me privately, Diana.
You're right. Everyone, let me write HubSpot for everyone, so you know what he's saying. Okay, there we go.
So they're holding a competition that basically is kind of embracing what we're learning in Dreamweaver. It's called the Themes Challenges, and it's basically designing a theme that you would use for their asset marketplace. And I can go ahead and post the link in the chat. I think this is very interesting, and it's probably very applicable to some people who want to give their hand a try at like designing stuff, since we are doing it here in class.
All right.
But
I'm looking it up already. Sounds great.
Yeah, so it's basically that it takes a bunch of like design and then understanding of coding, all those different things to create a theme that you know, HubSpot users would like to use, basically pick up from the marketplace. And the great thing about it is that they have cash prizes. I mean, you get recognition from
$30,000 I am reading.
yeah. Yeah. So it honestly, it's a good experience for anybody who really wants to like try their hand at like creating a theme for like a website. It's like WordPress-esque, Wix,
Yeah.
Squarespace sort of thing.
You kind
So
of create something ready for people to adopt. So
yeah.
here's the thing, guys, and I know that many of you guys are going, well, I don't know enough about to do that. But guess what? Leland didn't know enough about it either. And he just threw the hat in and he's doing these things. And now it's working for him. And that's kind of my son. He began entering things some years ago. And next thing you know, he's winning everything. Because a lot of people think, well, I'm not good enough, and they don't. So those who do begin to not only advance in their field because they have to push themselves to do something wouldn't have done easily otherwise, and you get prizes. That's when my son decided, oh, whoa, I can make money by entering these things. And so, you know, he bought his own computer with his prizes and stuff like that. So you don't know until you try. But the most important thing what Leland said is, in order to do something you don't know how to do, you'll have to learn, right? So so you'll end up learning much more because you discover things that you don't know how to do. So yeah, pushing yourself is always great. Thank
So
you so
are
much,
these-
Leland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
are these
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
No problem.
So are these group project or individual projects?
These are basically you form a team. And so the thing about this HubSpot thing is that you can form a team up to, you know, unlimited amount of people. It doesn't have to be like, you can do it yourself. You can do it in teams of like 5 or more. For me, like, I'm still trying to find a team because there's just so many people who aren't really embracing coding. So I'm a UX designer. I'm still trying to find people on my team. But it's practically just coming together, trying to make a theme together. So yeah.
So in a team, they divide tasks?
I'd say it's just like any sort of project that you do. You divide up sort of what are the ideas, what can people do, stuff like that. It really is kind of that aspect. You can really just kind of organize it the way that you would want to. So
You guys, that question is good in real life. Once you know what your strengths are and you start working, you know, if someone hires you to do something, you'll know that some of you guys will be good at one part, some of you guys will be another, some will be good at everything, and some will be only very specific. And that's how teams work. Some people will be looking for a front-end developer or a back-end developer or a UX designer or, you know, just the graphic designer, so to say. There's different places for everyone to fit themselves in. But at first, you know, you kind of, right now we're making these little one page websites, but when you have something bigger, it's really hard to tackle everything and to be good at everything. So you start finding the thing that works best for you, and then you go, okay, I'm good at this, you know, like Leland's defining himself as a UX designer. So it's user experience, and so it's how the site works, what is the best way to make it to link to what, you know, create that whole flow of the site. That would be that specialty. Someone else might be really good at coding, someone else might be really good at creating the graphic images, and so then you kind of say what you're better at and the team comes together. Sometimes there's 2 people who do the same thing, and then you go, well, you do this part, I'll do that part. It depends on the team, it depends on the business, it depends on how and who you're working with, everyone, but try to choose the things that appeals to you most and get good at that. Because that's all I can say as far as how to, or something you already are. Like I was already a designer, so it's easier for me to work on that portion of websites, the graphic, the imaging, the visual stuff, the UX part, than it is to do the coding, versus someone else who's been an engineer and has always been into, you know, DOS and other stuff since the old times. They might really enjoy the coding part, and so you use each other's best abilities when you're in a team to make it work. So yeah.
So if anyone is interested in doing it, you can let me know. The teams are very open. There isn't a limit, so I'm glad to work with anybody who is interested here. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Leland.
You guys, you can reach him, you can write to him in a chat, or if you right now don't want to say anything, but later you go, I'd like to give it a try, even if what you do is just a certain small amount of participation or a lot. Email me, and then I can email him, and you guys can then communicate. I can't give you his email. I'm not allowed to connect students that way. But if you tell me it's okay for you to give Leland my email, then I can give Leland your email, and then Leland can contact you. And that way it's all kosher, and it's not me giving out anyone's information. You know what I mean?
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Leland.
Okay.
Yep, no problem. No pressure, anyone.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm writing to Ali on my other computer. So isn't it great? Ali is like waiting for her teenager to come home to help her with the text part. It's like, yeah, isn't it? What class was I in? I was teaching a class the other day when someone kind of slightly disparagingly, not in a bad way, said something about, well, you call tech support and it's this young girl. And I'm like, you know what? That young girl probably knows way more than the old guy as tech support. So don't disparage when you hear a young person on the other side, because they probably have much more background knowledge than someone they could or probably would have more information. I don't know. It felt a bit strange I didn't react to the girl part, much more to the it's a young girl, and I'm like, yeah, young girls, young boys, they got this. They grew up with this stuff, Anyway, so any questions before we embark upon today's class? I'm glad to know, by the way, Ali is saying that she didn't have sound issues last week, so she just watched the recording. So remember that if you're battling against something, just watch the recordings. You can kind of jump around to see the issue that you need to catch up with the class. Okay, so any questions? Mira had a lot of questions. Leland had an announcement. Anything else before we jump in? I'm glad to see Daryl's desk back there where, hi, who was that cutie pie who was hanging around in front of the computer before? I don't know. There's a cute kid.
That was my granddaughter.
That's your granddaughter? All right, thank you. You had mentioned that you're having to do a lot of babysitting or grandchild sitting. So
Well, she's staying with us for a while.
Yeah.
Our youngest son has 3 children under 10. One's 2, and they both work. It's a 5-year-old can't turn to page 150 because she doesn't know what that is. So anyway, we're helping.
Well, can you speak so I can see if I can hear you better now? Somebody speak.
Hello?
There we go. Headsets. I just put on headsets because I was having a hard time hearing you guys. Thanks for doing your grandfatherly duties and participating in the class, Daryl. Okay. So I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna share with you something first. Well, not first, it's part of the class. Which I mentioned last week, I wanted to explain more deeply before we start working with CSS. You need to understand how the elements of HTML are structured. Because then understanding those elements, then with CSS, we can figure out how to modify the way those elements look or work. Last week at the very end of the class, we created a footer. And that footer, I said, well, let's kind of move it to the middle and make it wider and add some padding and stuff like that. And I kind of ran through that little bit really quickly. But I said, for you to understand what we just did, I need to explain to you the box model. And that's what I'm going to explain to you now, the box model, so that when we go do this again today, you have a more of an understanding of what it is that I told you to do and why, and we can apply it to other parts of the site. Okay. So over here we have a image that I want to explain a little bit. This is what's considered the box model. And let me put on a little tool, spotlight tool, so you can see my mouse. There we go. Okay, so here, this part that says the word content, the word content represents anything you're putting inside of that HTML tag. So it could be words, it could be your headline, it could be an image, it could be whatever you choose to put in there. So imagine it's the headline that we made, this is my first Dreamweaver, or imagine it's all the paragraph Lorem Ipsum text that we put in there. That would be the content that's enclosed by the HTML tag, right? So what if the word is the word content, right? And if you see it in HTML, you would have a tag here and a tag here saying, this is my heading 1, for example, right? So that's what content represents. It's the material that people are seeing on the site that you wrote inside of HTML. Now, that content has a certain width, and depending on how big or how small you make that font, or you know, stuff like that, it would have a certain size to it. So that's this element width, right? So say that you make that headline, you change the font size or whatnot to it, and ends up being about, I don't know, 20 pixels wide, right? And we'll talk a little more about sizing and stuff like that. But here we go, we have a certain width to this element. So when you go and place it, remember I told you how the elements in HTML continue by default and occupy the entire width of that website space? So you know how in Dreamweaver we can see that the box that goes around an element, and that blue box that takes over and fills the entire width? I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about, but if so, I'm gonna show you this in a minute in Dreamweaver, but just now, you can add material or elements through CSS to that content to make it fit or look better. And those elements that you can add would be padding, margin, border. Okay, so padding, border, or margin, so to say, it would be the 3 things that you could add. Now, hold on. I'm actually, at the same time as we speak, I'm typing in .sbcc.edu. I'm typing in I'm trying to pull up Dreamweaver so that I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so hold on, I'm typing pipeline.sbcc.
Can you say those elements again, please?
Yeah, I'll say them in a second. Go ahead. Meanwhile, go ahead. For those of you who aren't on Dreamweaver, who are on VDI, go ahead and make sure that you are signing in as I speak to HTML and to all of that, so that to VMView and all that, so that by the time we open up Dreamweaver, you're already in there, which is what I was doing on the other side. Okay, so here are the elements. They are margin, if you want to look down here, margin, border, and padding. So what's padding 9 in here? Okay, padding, margin, and border. So now let me explain this a little bit better, and then we're just going to do this in the computer so that you'll have a better idea of what I'm talking about. So what you need to consider when we talk about the size of an element, the size of your paragraph, the size of your heading, the size of your section, whatever it is, that HTML tag that is, you actually need to consider the size of it by adding not only the width of the content itself, but also any element that you added to it. So say that you gave it padding, that would be space in between the element itself and the edge of that element. So remember last week when we did the copyright, the word copyright was basically one long black line around it. And I said, ooh, let's give that a bit more space. Let's add more black above and beyond the word copyright. If you did that, then, hold on. And the thing is that I am aware that some of you might have not finished that or might have ended up had to leave the class early, and we did this towards the very end. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll show it to you myself, and then I can copy that website for you to continue working today from the point where we left it. Or remember that if you leave the class early and don't do a portion, please view that last, 10 or 20 minutes of the class so that you can have your site updated to the same that everyone else is. So anyway, and then you can or not choose to add a border. I'm not much into borders, but if you add a border, the border could be a little thin line. It could be a big fat line. So it would have a certain size to it as well. And then you can add some margin, and the margin is to separate your element from another element. So these three things together have a certain width to them. So say that you had a content of a certain size, a padding of a certain size, a border of a certain size, and a margin of a certain size. It's the addition of all these elements that ends up being your final width of that. I'm going to open up right now. I shouldn't have opened it up from there. Hold on. I'm going to open it up from somewhere else. I'm going to open it up from in here where I can handle it better. So I'm going to show you a small PowerPoint presentation where you can see better what I can show you better what I'm talking about. Can you see the thing that says CSS box model? Yeah, I think you can. Okay, forget the wording. The wording's because if you see this yourself, this file you have in your handouts. But here's the same idea drawn in a little different way. This is your content. The white stuff is your content, okay? Padding is space you make between the content and an end of the content, or if you add a border to it, between itself and the border. And then margin is space you make for this element between this element and another element. So we're going to actually play with this today. We're going to play with the box model a bit so that you can understand it better. But here's the example where if you have an element, whichever, this is just a generic div element. It could be H1, H2, it can be whatever. This is CSS. If the width of your element is 300 pixels, right? So say you're putting a photograph that is 300 pixels wide, or your word occupies that much space. You give it a little border of 225 25 pixels. You give it some padding and some margin. If you add this up, and this is a trick question to see if you're using all your my father used to say the thinking cap. So it's not a simple answer. What would be the total width of this element? Can somebody try to think about that answer?
450 pixels.
Uh-huh. How did you get to that number? Can you explain?
I added it all together. Well, the 25 and 25 and 25 you have to double.
Exactly.
And I added it.
So let me back you up to this image. If you have the content and you have padding here, you also have padding there. So if the content was 300 pixels and this is only 25, well, it's 25 here, but it's also 25 there. So suddenly that is 300 plus 25 plus 25 gives you 350. Then you made a border that was also 25 on two sides, so that's 50 more, so it brings you to 400. And then you have a margin of 25 pixels on both sides, so that brings you to the 450 that Daryl mentioned. Okay, so that's truly the end width of that element. So in this example, this is a different set of numbers, but it's that same idea. If you have a width of 320 plus a padding of 10, then you need to consider 20 pixels for padding, a border of 5, so that means 10 pixels for a border, and no margin. So then the final element size is 350 pixels, right? So that's how you have to consider the width of an element. Does that make sense? Any questions about that, you guys? Now, I'm not good at math, right? So when you start doing numbers that aren't so easy and rounded like 5s, 10s, and 20s, my brain, you know, But that's why Dreamweaver kind of is cool, because you add the numbers, take away the numbers, and it does the calculation for you. And that's what I'm going to show you today. The important thing is to make it fit in a way that looks good, but the code and what it really means is taken care of by Dreamweaver. Okay. Did this make sense? Is there any like no, why, or how come questions out there before I continue? All right. So there's
I
another.
have a question.
Yes. Yes.
Why, like in my first web page, in the code, in the footer tag, there's all the margins, top and bottom, color, all that stuff, and you could add other things, padding, border, whatever. But it's not within the division tag, and I'm wondering, do we always have to use that? Because it's not in the code that I have on my page.
We haven't created anything. Actually, the only thing that we did anything to, we added some padding, I believe, to the footer. So if you did that and you go to the code to CSS and see the footer, you would see that the footer has a padding number. I don't remember what we added.
Yeah, it has all that, but it doesn't have the division, the DIB tag.
Yeah, no, I said this DIB is just a generic tag. You could have this instead of, sorry, when I click on it, it goes away. You could have this saying footer in front of it. This is the selector. It could be that you're trying to define the body or the header or the whatever tag you put in here. In order to not have people think it was a specific tag, then I put div, which means any tag, but no, it doesn't. That's why I'm saying it's kind of representing whatever selector you choose in here. Any selector that you choose, you can apply with border, padding, margin, or whatever to it. So we did not create a div tag, and I'll explain more about what a div tag means, but we don't have a div tag yet in our website. So our whole HTML for the little website has no div tag, so we wouldn't be applying this to a div tag. It would have to be applied to a tag that we do have, and we have H1s, we have paragraphs, we have body tags, we have, I believe, footer. I think we made a header tag. Those are the only tags we have right now on our webpage, so those are the only ones we'd be able to apply this to, but it can apply to any HTML tag. Okay.
Well, it seems like I don't know, that tag really doesn't do anything, but I looked at some of the sample code that in Dreamweaver for their more expansive web pages, and they use that tag a ton.
Yeah. Yeah. Today I'm going to be talking about structural tags, and I'll explain more about that tag, including the div tag. And the older the tags that you are using, then the hold on, I'm having to sign into something and my brain can't do signing in and speaking at the same time. There we go. The older the website, the more div tags that used to be there. I'll actually explain deeply more about tag names and meanings right now. But the newer tags, newer websites have much more specific or semantic tags, leaving div tags to do what they need to do. before, when you didn't know what to call something, you called it a div tag. And so there was like, everything was a div tag. Now there's many more specific tags, leaving div to be the things that can't be specified. So give me a second while we finish with this, and then I'll go into the whole explanation of what is or isn't a div tag, okay? But yes, we don't have one in our website yet, so it wouldn't be something that you would have used yet. I wanted to explain one more thing about CSS properties that we might be using today, and that's the floats. So there's a float property, and a float property is something that helps us move things to the right or to the left of our page. So let me explain this. You know, the word float brings to mind something floating in water, right? Or maybe floating in air, I don't know. But I do know that I think of floating as something floating in water, okay? So what I want us to think of is, look at this little drawing in front of us and imagine this pink stuff. I did change the color. This yellow stuff is water, right? And imagine that these are 3 elements, maybe 3 apples or 3 things that normally would float, that are stacked one on top of each other, right? So consider that our web page works that way, where each element could float, but we put them one after each other, right? So when we just write H1, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, or maybe we have heading 1, heading 2, and paragraph. On our website, they just appear one after the other. When we decide to apply a float to something, so say that I tell my website, this thing here that's on this yellow little element, I would prefer it to appear on the right side of my page. So maybe it's a photograph, maybe it's a heading, you want it to be on the right side of the page. So what you do is you apply a float to it. When you apply a float to it saying, please float right, what's gonna happen, it's gonna move to the right, but since these are little, imagine bobbing apples, they're not gonna just stay down there, they're gonna float up, right? Because again, imagine these are apples bobbing in water, then these two, once you remove the top one, the other 2 are gonna go whoop, and they're gonna head up, okay? So when you're done with applying that float, you'll end up with an element that, yes, this moved to the right, but now this thing is on top. So now you might need to do something to this one and to this one, okay? So when you float something, all the other elements are affected by it. And you can then clear that float or have something else float left, float right, or clear floats it so that, and that's gonna be something I'm gonna show you now when we go into our website. When we start applying some floats to things, stuff is gonna look like it's getting messed up, right? And it is, and it's because of this float feature where if you float one thing, you're gonna have to then deal with the fact that others have taken that place. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I just wanted to explain the meaning of what's gonna happen to the element once we apply floats. You will understand it when we actually do it more than here, but have I not shown you this, then you would not know how come by applying floats suddenly everything is going wacky on our site. But now you have an understanding of why things go wacky when you apply floats, and you just need to keep working on images for them to stop going wacky. Okay, I'm going to stop this share. And I'm going to spend another little bit of time talking about the structural elements and what they do or what they mean. I'm looking for, hold on, this is not it. Where's my structural? Here we go. Okay. So here's a different website. Whoops, I first need to share. Any questions meanwhile, while I'm opening this? Nope. Okay. So then
I have a question.
Oh, yep.
So you said you can apply that the float to any element you want, like a heading, a picture, or whatever,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. hmm
Well,
That's
if
that's
you let's say you apply it to maybe a subheading like a H2 or an H3, well then that's going to float every H3 that you use, right?
yeah. Great point.
So how do you not, if you just want to float one, not all of them,
hmm
how do you do that?
Yeah. So that is fixed with something called a class. So I'm going to be telling you about classes today as well. So did you guys understand his point? If I tell all the H2s to be green, or all the H2s to float right, or all the H2s to be 10 points, right? Then all I do is I define one H2 in the CSS, but that defines every single H2. So how do you distinguish when you really only wanted one of those H2s to float, right? Okay. So then what you need to do is you need to apply a class. It's like a sub setting where you go, the H2 called this, make only that one float to the right. Okay. So that's how you separate amongst all of the different H2s, the one H2 you're trying to target. So once again, this is the kind of stuff that since you understand what you're asking, you understand the answer, but a lot of people who don't really even understand the question yet might not get that answer. So we're going to actually create that today in our little page that we're doing. We're going to create, you know how we have two paragraphs, we're going to have to define a class so that we can do something different to one than to another. Okay. So yeah, great question. And again, someone who you're thinking about what I'm saying. So that's pretty cool. Thank you, Daryl. All right. So let me, any, other than me actually doing it later when we do it, any question about what I explained? I mean, did that make sense to you when I answered that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So if you don't know about classes yet, today I'm going to show you classes and then it'll be explained to everyone. Okay, so now there's a part that I wanted to explain that's very important, is that HTML for years and years and years was written in such a way that each HTML tag that appeared had a function for that page. Like you're going to be the heading, you're going to be the paragraph, you're going to be like, each tag really meant something as to what it was going to, what place or, you know, in the structure, in the in the category, so to say, it was going to do. But if it wasn't, if what the content you wanted to bring in wasn't one of those things, it was hard to know what tag to put. So when you had no other tag, everyone would just use the tag div, like a generic tab, right? Which worked for a while until it became important for the website to become accessible. Accessible, the word accessible, what does accessibility mean, you guys? Who wants to venture a thought of what I mean with accessibility? Hello? Anyone want to venture a guess the word accessibility? Those of you who were in my classes before, you should have an inkling of what I'm talking about. Silence, echo, bing. Think about your real life. When someone says something is accessible or not, anything ringing a bell?
You able to reach that
Yes.
object?
If it's accessible, you can reach it, right? So what if you can't reach it? It's not accessible to you, right? So if you're short, like me, those of you who haven't seen me in person, I'm a shorty. When I try to reach something, I need some help. I need a step stool, or I need, that's why I married a tall husband, right? I can just call him to go grab it, right? Or I need to do something for that to be more accessible to me. That jar in the top counter, I have to bring a step stool. So basically, accessibility features are things that make, in the case of the web, accessible to everyone. So if you are hard of hearing, if you are blind, if you if you can't write, if you don't have arms, can you type? There's all these different ways of making the internet, the laptops, and the world accessible. Ramps on sidewalks, whatever it might be. So on the internet, accessibility means that someone who is blind can still see, so to say, access your webpage. And so in order for, thank you.
You're welcome.
it triggered the thought, right? So that's the thing. There's a kind of app called a screen reader, literally, that will read out loud a website to a person who can't see it. So if someone can't see and read it and see the photo, then a screen reader is going to trigger and is going to say, the headline says my first website, and the next, the subtitle is by Diana Musacchio, and here the paragraph says Laura Ipsum, yada yada yada, right? It'll read it out loud, and then it'll say the image is a photograph of flowers, right? So that's what a screen reader does. It makes that which is just visual content be able to be accessible to a person who is blind. There's other types of accessibility content, but that's the thing. That's one of the main needs for websites. And if you have a website right now that is not accessible, meaning you haven't structured it for accessibility, then Google gets really upset. And Google is the king of the web. I don't know if you know, but if you have a website and you really care about Google being able to find it and rank it when people search for websites. So it's, you have to abide by King Google, in that if your website is not findable by Google, you won't get customers and stuff like that, because the majority of people find your website through Googling, right? I mean, you might have some people that know to type in your address and reach your website, but for the most part, you would say, hairstylist in Santa Barbara, and boom, someone would show up, and then you can research the top 5 or 10 until you find one you like. But if you don't end up being in that top 5 or 10 because Google doesn't like your website because it's not accessible, you'll be on page 250,000 and they'll never find you. Does that make sense? So in order to move up the rankings, your website has to be accessible. It's very important. It's become one of the most important issues on the web over the last few years. Well, 4 or 5 years, more than that, but since people are truly taking it more seriously. So, so what's happening is that a whole bunch of new tags got created that are just about creating structure to your website. Now, these tags are structural, semantic tags, things that actually don't necessarily have a content of their own. What they do is they give structure. So imagine, and this is the way I want to think about it, imagine you are the kind of person who takes your lunch to work in the Tupperware or in a lunchbox, right? So you've set out, you've made yourself some salad, you have a hard-boiled egg, I don't know, you have some salad dressing. And if you were to grab a plastic bag and throw all that stuff in there, and then when you get to work, open your plastic bag and start eating it, I guess it would work. The stuff is kind of in there, but it would be a mess, wouldn't it? If you like to have your dressing and your egg and your salad separate until you put it together, or maybe you throw in a sandwich in there too, and now the sandwich has all of its ingredients kind of mixed up. That would be an example of HTML without structural web stuff. On the other hand, you're one of those people who bought a little bento box or a little Tupperware with little line, you know, the Tupperware that have divisions inside, and you put the sandwich on one side and you put the salad on the other side, and then you have a little container for your salad dressing. Then you open up that lunchbox when you get to work, and yeah, there it is. Everything is where it should be. You have structure to your lunch. Does that, you picture the everything all together in one huge mess bowl, or everything structured out? That's the kind of tags that are called structural sites. they don't particularly hold, they can hold a salad, a sandwich, a soup, whatever you put into it, doesn't matter what, but they hold a space, a structure for the content, okay? So that's what these structural HTML tags are all about. So you can have a heading that says, for example, this website is about types of apples, you know, and the company information might be a logo and a headline that says, eat apples for your health all the time, or something like that. And then the navigation might have, you know, a couple of buttons like who we are, click here to see 5 types of apples. So all that's the content that would be held by the HTML tags that are heading 1 and paragraph and stuff. But the actual holders of all that information, so the one that holds the navigation would be the one that we put in the other day called nav. So the nav HTML tag would hold all of the links that are part of your nav bar. So it's that portion of the Tupperware that holds all of your links would be called the nav. And the portion of that container Tupperware that holds your main sandwich, or for example, the description of apples available, might be called main, or section, or articles, or footer, okay? So these are different kinds of tags. They are tags that are called just structural. So so here's an example of, you might have the nav tag in here holding bunches of stuff, and that we call the nav. Or in the header you might have logos or company bylines or things like that. You might have an article here about different kinds of apples, and you have one section which is all about apples and many little articles inside of it, right? So these words, article, section, header, nav, main, footer, these are, imagine those containers for whatever you put inside of it, okay? So these containers are what we use now versus in the way past. They just used to call everything divs. Div, 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 div. Every single one of those was called div. And inside of the div, they put all of the links for the navigation. Inside of the div, they put the logos. Inside of the div, they put all the different material to describe the apples. Now they've come up with actual tags that are semantic in the sense that their name describes what they do. The footer tag is actually the footer. The nav tag is what holds the navigation, right? And that's the semantic portion of these tags. Now, why is this important? Back to a real life example, think about a book. If something says, go to the content and look for the page for chapter 8, you would understand what you need to do. You would probably go and flip to the first 2 or 3 pages of that book to find the context. And then in there you'd go, oh, page 47, and you'd go to page 47. So the fact that you know what the content or index page does allows you to know how to get to that chapter. You'd know that the title page is going to tell you what the title of the book is, and that if you flip it to the next page, you're going to have like the copyright information and all that. You just know that, right? Well, those are structural elements of your book. Sometimes, you know, to go to the very end to look for a glossary or things like that. So it's things that people know mean something to when you read a book. Where do you find the index? Usually in the front. Where do you find the glossary? Usually in the back. So that's what these tags mean on a web page. And to whom it matters is, for example, to Google for accessibility, and to screen readers for accessibility standards. Because when the screen reader sees a page without these kind of tags, like ours, you can put in a header, you can put in an image, but to Google, it's kind of like that salad and sandwich all in one bag. And so when you find that, the screen reader doesn't know how to read the things out loud. It doesn't know what to start with. It doesn't know what's the most important part of this page. What's the main definition of this page if you don't put these structural tags in place. So the screen reader has a hard time. Thus, the person who's trying to read your website, who is blind and is depending on a screen reader, can't read it. Thus, your page is considered not accessible, meaning not accessible to people with accessibility issues. So Google notices that your site doesn't have this structural tags, thus that screen readers don't want to find it, and it goes, pooh-hoo, I am not going to bring this website up when someone searches for something. Because Google itself needs those tags to understand. What's the point of your site? Oh, it's a site that talks about apples. Oh, okay, because that's in the heading 1, and it's the most important thing. And what's the main content, and what's the section? So Google looks at those tags to know how, when someone types in, I want to know about apples, it looks at all the headers that say what it wants to know about Fuji apples. It looks into all its bazillions of websites and finds someone who in the right portion of the right tag wrote the word Fuji apples, and it brings those up to the top. And if the structure isn't good for that site, it leaves it floundering way in the bottom. So if you use divs for everything instead of semantic tags, your site is not considered accessible. Okay. So anyway, these are examples of layout or structural elements, and we began to put some of those in last week without having me done this whole explanation. We put in a header, we put in a footer, we put in a nav. We're going to put a few more in there. We're going to put the sections and articles and things like that. And then the good news about this is that when you do have something that doesn't fit into any of these features, then you could use div. But at least div is constrained to things that don't fit into other tags that are available and in existence. Div basically just means a division. Again, a portion of that container with all those little separators. A div just is another division, another space, another element that divides things. And you can put things into a div tag. But it leaves many less div tags open for confusion. Okay? Does that explain now the whys or the whats of a div tag? Oh, I've been sharing the wrong page, but it doesn't matter. You've still been seeing it. There's much more here. You have access to all of this information. It's all in your handouts if you want to see this entire website. Here I have, under section elements, I have explanations for each one of these tags. So the body tag, H1s, or H6s, all of these are elements that you can read more deeply in here. In the web coding fundamentals, I teach more about them, but here I'm going to be explaining to them as we use them. But you're welcome to come to this handout, which you do have in your material, to look through them yourself. Okay, so here we have information about H through H1. Here we have an explanation of what a header does, and it also tells you how many times you can use it, how many times you can't use it. Here's what a nav does, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to refer to these and tell you to come and look at these whenever you need, the difference between what's an article or what's a section, okay, what's a main tag, what's a footer tag, and so on and so forth. But right now I want to put hands on work and let you know that that's all of this is available to you. I might come back to it when I need to explain one or the other, but there you go. Okay. I'm going to stop my sharing for a second so I can close some of these PowerPoints. My computer has too many open things and I need to close some things up before I can actually keep working. Meanwhile, I'm about to open up my computer. So if you, not my computer, I'm about to start sharing my Dreamweaver. So if you have any questions. Nope. I just want to make sure the sound is fine and I'm not hearing you. No questions?
No questions.
Okay. Okay. So I am signing in right now to the Google Drive file stream. So I'm going to start sharing this page now. So for those of you who are using VDI, what I just did is I signed into VMware Horizon. I signed in to my Google Drive file stream. If you haven't done that yet and you need help, I can help you, but otherwise this is what I expect you to know how to do by now on your own. Remember, you need to sign out and sign into your Google Drive file stream each time. And now I'm going to open up Dreamweaver. So everything I've been talking to you about, these tags and structural tags that we started to apply, and the whole box model explanation is something we're going to apply into continuing to work now with this page. Now, okay. So I want to be able to open a particular file. If you are on VDI, are you caught up with me? Do you have your Google Drive signed in? Is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm all signed in.
Cool.
Yes.
If someone is not here or needs help, speak up or give me a little no on your give me a little no on your, there we go.
Deanna, do I need the updated files from last week since I was absent?
Yeah, no, I haven't added anything to the files.
Okay.
Everything is fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thanks for asking. So for a website, it's not a good idea to open it from the files. In Dreamweaver, it's much better, remember, to open them from inside of Dreamweaver as a site. And the reason you want that is because you want the files here to be ready to go. Now, I am not sure where this was left. We did a couple of different things towards the end. Some people here would have the right files, some people would not. But over here, I'm going to ignore any of that because these links normally, if you are on your own computer, these links work. But if you're in VDI, clicking onto this, they don't kind of remember where things were because you have to connect and disconnect each time. So if you're home, you might be able to open your website from here. But for anyone who's on VDI and from anyone who's home anyway, if you don't have the first website here, the best thing to do is to go to Site. You can go to Manage Sites. And then you can go and open the site that you're trying to use, which is Deanna's first website or whatever website you're working with, and say done, and it's going to open up. So see how over here now, before I had something else that said learning site, and now it says Deanna's first website. Does that make sense? So I don't know if you guys remember, but at the end of last week's class, for those of you who were here, we were working on Deanna's first website, and then I said, you guys, you can just create a new website, copy this one, and play on your own. And so we created a new one that we called Playing Learning, stuff for you at home over the week to just mess around with. So that should be, if you stayed to the end of the class, the site that you had open when you first opened Dreamweaver. Now, what I just did by going to Site is Site Manage Sites is I changed this back to the one that we've been using in class so that we're all in the same place. If you're in learning or in something else, you won't be in the same place. So if you're in the Deanna's or Your Name's first website and then say done, then the files here now are going to be the same ones we've been working on. Now, for someone who wasn't here last week, I can give you this site. Who wasn't here? Leland, anyone else who wasn't here last week? I'm gonna have you guys give me a yay. So I said to Leland, I said, well, no, there's no files you need, but I don't know how far behind what we did last week you are from 2 weeks ago. So I'm wondering if I should give you some sites, some
I
files.
think I have everything from like the 2 weeks ago. If it was
Yeah,
any
but
updates from the last class, then I probably don't have it because I was
yes,
only able to stay for 30
yeah,
minutes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what you don't have is what we did last week. So what
Oh,
I
okay.
can do, what we can do, so we already have a CSS file, which we didn't have 2 weeks ago, and we have some other elements. So what I can do is I'm going to copy this site, okay? And I'm going to go over to the shared Google Drives. So if you go to the shared Dreamweaver shared site, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this one because this is the old one from that I gave, I believe, Pedro last week when he showed up. So I'm going to get rid of that one. Okay. And now I'm going to copy this new one in there. So, oh, sorry, I forgot that I'm in a PC and I did a copy paste when it should have been a, hold on. So command copy. And then I'm going to put this in here under shared drive Dreamweaver. So anyone who did not stay till the end of the class last week, then go ahead and go into the Google Drive file stream, Dreamweaver shared files. And this Gianna's First website is the site, the equivalent. This is where we finished last week. So you can open this one and give it your own name, okay? And just copy this, copy it, and put it in your My Drive or your computer or download it or whatever. Give it your name and open it up, and then you'll be in the same place that the rest of us are. I know Leland was able to follow that. I'm pretty sure he was able to follow that.
Yep,
If not,
I got
ask
it.
me.
It's
But
downloading.
anyone else, you all seem to have been here last week. Pedro, I never know last week if you caught up. So Pedro, can you answer in the chat, if not out loud, whether you have the right thing open? Otherwise, go and do the same thing I just told, or I can help you get there. Last week, I basically gave up because you weren't responding. So Pedro, as you're there, please respond. Pedro knows that from before. I've told him before. This class is participation based, and if I talk to you and ask you for stuff and I never see your work, I'm assuming that you're not there or that you are not doing the work. So I can't give you a passing grade on this class. So remember that after this class is over, up until now, a few of you have sent me a snapshot of your work. I haven't requested it as an official request yet because most of you have been sharing your screen, so I know where you're at. But if you're one of the people that I don't see and doesn't share and doesn't ask questions, then I cannot give you a passing grade. So you need to participate and share and show. And one of the ways you can do that is by doing a screenshot of everything you've done at the end of the class and just emailing it to me. And I've gotten quite a few of those at the end of each class. Please, everyone else, remember to do that if I don't remember to tell you. But if you have shared with me and shown it to me in class, then I know you're following. So that's okay. It's mainly for people who are not. Okay. All right, so here I am in Dreamweaver, and I have the need to, I'm going to make this a bit smaller so it represents a bit more like what everyone else in class has, more of a reduced page. And I need to hit escape here on my other computer so I can see what you guys are seeing. There we go. And so now, if it says Diana's First website or your name's first website, I'm ready to open it. So I can open it by clicking over here in the panel of index, double click, and it'll open up. So if you just opened up from mine, for example, Leland, you can just go in here and change by Diana, so I can change it to your name. Either if you did that as well, change it to your name. And right now that's the only personalized, so to say, thing that we have. But where we're at is that we already have a style sheet where we gave a few different little bits of information in CSS. So we told our H1 to be a certain color. That's what we did there. And we created a footer, which is one of these structural elements. And if I scroll all the way to the bottom, there's my footer. And I know, guys, I don't know if you remember, but at first it was just the little word copyright with a little long black box string around it. And I said, ooh, I need to give it some space, right? So that the box is bigger. And so what I said is, let's add some padding to it. And there we go. We added some padding. I gave it some 25 pixel padding above and below so that copyright is floating in the middle. But my footer has some padding. And so copyright is the content. And then the padding is above and below. And I also told the text to align center. We gave the background of the footer a color. It became black. And then we got the text. Whoops, let me scroll back up. We got the text to go white. And so that's the color of it. The background color is black and the color of the text is white. Okay. We aligned the text center and then we gave it a padding, which is that space in between the element and the end of itself. Okay. So if you remember padding, if I wanted to make more space in between the element and the next element, then that would be margin. So if I wanted space in between this element, which is the P tag, or this element, which is the footer, I would have to add margin. But if all I wanted is space inside of itself, inside of the footer, then I go and add padding. Does that clarify a little bit, padding versus margin? Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. Thank you. I know you guys think it's very little, but the 1 or 2 words saying yay really help. And crucial, if it's no, because you don't get it, then do say that, because then I can explain it a different way. Do some other mental gymnastics to get you to get it. So
I don't
right
have
now,
all of those elements.
okay. So this is the work we did at the end of class, last class. If you don't have it, and anyone else who doesn't have it, you can open it up by going and using my last website. So Robert, are you on your own computer or are you on
No, I have my own computer.
your own Dreamweaver? Okay, so what you can go is you can go up to SBCC Google Drive, and I'm showing you what to do. Go into pipeline and then just and then go into the shared drive, Google Drive, and download. So this is what, Pedro, you would have to do this too. Or no, Pedro, you're on, I think Pedro is on. Yeah, Pedro just left. Yeah. Participate. Yeah. Okay. So so go over to the student non-credit, and then you go to Google Drive, and then in here go to shared drives. Find Dreamweaver. So I'm kind of going over it fast just because I know you've done this enough times to remember. And then in the Dreamweaver class files, by the way, this for everyone else, this is where I have, normally you see it this way. These are all these things that I've been showing you today, and all these CSS box model, syntax, units, all of the stuff that I'm showing you is here for you to, you know, peruse. I just show it to you when I need to in the moment, but all the material is there from the beginning. So then when you open up the Dreamweaver class files, there's the Diana's First website. Go ahead and right click and download it if this is your own computer, Robert, and then use that one to work with today. Because in this one, we have all the material, the styles, and the material that I just showed you.
Thank
Is
you.
Is that helpful?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So now, as a reminder, how did we create these? We didn't write them. What we did, can someone remember how this got created? What did we do in Dreamweaver to get these things to be written? Where did we go?
The CSS designer.
Yep. Thank you. Over here, we had files, libraries, insert, and CSS designer. And in the CSS designer, we created two what? What are these called? What are these called? These are?
Selectors.
Yep. Thank you, selectors. We created these two selectors to modify what H1 and what the footer would do. Those are the only two things that we've done with CSS right now. So we went to H1, and if we choose to show set, you'll see that the only thing we did was the color, and there it is. And if we go to the footer and show set checked on, then it tells us that we added padding, a color to the text, and a background. And yep, there it is. In footer, we did the padding, the color, and the background, and the text align over there. And there it is. Okay. Now, if we want to add more things to it, we would have to uncheck the show set and keep adding more things. But the show set is what shows you the things that you did and only what you did. So just so that we're clear about this, and since I just showed you the box model, please go to your CSS designer. Select your footer selector. Okay, so if you were here still in files or in insert or anywhere else, go to CSS designer tab and then click on your footer. And then over here, if this is off, then every choice available is going to be available to you. Click on show set so you see only the ones that we've already made. And in this show set, we're going to play around a little bit more with this padding so you can have a better understanding of what it is that we did last week. I just said add padding and then we were done. But now I want us to experience this padding a little bit more. So notice that little drawing of the box model that I showed you a little bit. Doesn't this little box represent pretty much that same box model shape where you have the box, the space, and the other box right there? So this little drawing, what it's saying is the padding, this is the padding box, 25 pixels to the top, 25 pixels to the bottom. We didn't add padding to the left or to the right. And we don't need to because look at all the space we have here to the left and to the right. So all we needed was space up and down, and we chose to add pixels. So what if I want to change that top? I want more padding. Well, I can just make this bigger. And I can either type a number in there, or look what happens when I put my mouse over it. It turns into a little, see how it's a little hand with a thumb? I can click and drag. It's a scrub. And I can make this bigger by going to the right or to the left. So I'm making it really big. I'm going to add, I don't know, 100 or so pixels here to my top padding. So when I look at what happened, my copyright is sitting there and I've added a whole bunch more padding to the top above my content. So this is my copyright content. If copyright wording is my content, I've added more padding by shifting this number around. Or if I click and drag down, I'm taking some of that padding away. Same thing with the bottom one. What if I now make my bottom padding bigger? Now I've got much more, and I have much more space in the bottom and less on the top. Okay, so play around with these numbers a bit. There's no right number. There's learn how padding works. It works on that interior space. So if I want that copyright to show up at the very top, I give it 0 padding. And if I want nothing in the bottom and I give this 0 padding as well, then that's how we started out, where copyright, the box model tells you, first of all, that the element goes, when you give it a background, everything from right to left, as big and as wide as that page will be that element. So the whole thing turned black. But it's encroaching upon my content because it had no padding. So then I added a little bit of padding by clicking in here and dragging to the right. And so if I scroll down, now I have a little bit of space in there. Every time I do that, I don't know if you've been noticing, but over here, my padding number is changing. Okay? And if you don't see this, if you're in source code and you're just seeing the HTML, go ahead and change to show and see your styles. And that's in the styles, you'll see this number changing. Okay. Also, my text align right now says center, but I could go over here to text align and go ahead and say far right and see how my copyright went to the far right, and then this text align changed to right. Anyway, let's bring it back to center. Let's add a little bit more padding. And if you don't like using the scrubber thing, which moves to the right and to the left, you can just click in there and you can type it in yourself. You can say 25, but then don't forget to write PX, okay? Or you can click in there and write 25 PX and say enter, because there's different types of numbers that we could be using. Pixels is one type of unit. And if you don't specify them, the computer might not know if you're talking about pixels or M's or percentages or whatever you're talking about, okay? Any questions about how to use the CSS designer in order to change your CSS features that get then automatically written in here? If this isn't working for anyone, if you can't see this or what I'm talking about, please speak up. Nope, we're all okay?
Oh, Deanna, I have a question.
Yes, Mira.
Does Dreamweaver have a history of changes like Photoshop does?
No. Meaning,
Like if you have changed?
yeah. There's a feature in Photoshop, for those of you who don't know Photoshop, there's a feature in Photoshop that that's called the history, where you can go up and down on your changes. No, we don't have that. What we do have in like any other program other than Photoshop, you do have history in the sense that you have but you can always undo, Command Z, right? Or Control Z. You can undo, undo, undo. But the undo works really well in the world of Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Undo is a feature that's universal. The problem with Dreamweaver, if you do undo, is that since we kind of sometimes go from source to style, like we're working on so many different things at the same time, if you just did the change, say from 25 pixels, right? If I just change that to 89 pixels, and if right now I do Control Z, it did go, it did work. See that? That was a Control Z to change it back to 25. But if perchance my next change is in code or in other stuff, when I start doing undo, unbeknownst to me, maybe the undo is happening in my source code kind of blindly. And I'm not aware that I'm undoing stuff that I did in there. Or if I'm in here making changes and I do Command Z and then I go Command Z, 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 maybe my third element in that history was something I did in style. So something will undo here that wasn't supposed to have been undone. So it's a bit dangerous to use the undo for many levels of history. It's fine to do an initial quick little undo if you are on the same file, but it's not as reliable as it is in other programs, because you might be doing an undo. Maybe the last thing you did is you moved and you went to your files and you grabbed one of these loose images that you had left out and put it in the right place. And then you're here working on colors and you do one undo too many and boom, that thing will move outside, right? So you have to be careful.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Deanna, I missed something here.
Yes, Robert?
The footer, vertically, I can't get the words up or down, the copyright word.
I'm sorry, I got distracted for a second. You said what
Where it
the
says
word?
copyright to 2010,
Yeah.
it disappeared and I can't get it vertically back.
It's possible that it disappeared because when you're changing things, you need to kind of scroll back up. Is that what happened? No, because it tends to want to go out of sight. Or did it leave the footer completely?
It's gone.
Okay, so this is fine. I'm going to go ahead and save. I'm going to go up to File and Save As for whatever changes we've been making, and I'm going to stop sharing. Go ahead and share your screen so I can help you figure out where it went.
Let's see.
So meanwhile, you guys go ahead and play around with some of those elements. If you want to try to change the font color again or the background color again, play around with some of that footer stuff, and And meanwhile, let me see what's up with Robert. Okay, so can you show me your CSS, meaning go up to the very top of the screen and see where it's click on styles. Perfect. So I can see your CSS. Great. Click on that. Oh, it's not showing. Go ahead and click again. Yeah, click. There we go. So your footer is there. It says 50 pixels, so it doesn't seem like the numbers are off. Okay, so now go hover over where it says by Robert, you know, kind of move down to the photo over that area, and now scroll up and down. Can you with your mouse scroll up? There it is. Oh, there you did it again. So scroll up again. There you go. See how it's
Okay.
there? It's just that it was at the very bottom, and when you change those numbers, the view there shifts, and you need to kind of scroll to see it up again, right? If you
Thank
scroll
you.
down or up, you won't see it. Okay, you're
Perfect.
welcome. All right. Any other questions before I start sharing mine? This is a good time for you if you need to show me something that is or isn't working for you. Nope. Is everything working for everyone? Okay, so then I'll share mine again. All right. So, so what I was trying to say is that every time you go in here and choose one of these elements and change something drastically, see how my view shifted and it's showing it to me from the top again? So now you need to scroll back again to see it. And if I go and change this again, somehow this resets and shows me from the top. So you need to keep with your mouse scrolling over here to see your changes, okay? All right, so I don't know if you guys made any other changes per se, but if you did, and you want to see them, scroll back up. Here's the thing. I'm ready to begin to create more structure and then really begin to using CSS to work with that structure to see our paragraphs in different ways or our headlines in different ways. But we haven't really actually seen this as a web page on the web itself. We've only been seeing it here inside of Dreamweaver. So how about we do a little preview of this page and how it's looking like in the internet. So first of all, go to File and Save All. I'm going to make sure to save everything so that the last change we made is the one that we see. Go ahead and do a Save All. And if you like to click on little icons, the icon that I want us to do is down there. Let me put a, hold on, let me get again one of those little spotlight guys. There we go. So down here, there's an icon that helps us do a preview. You could also go to View and Preview Live. No, where would it be? I never do it from here. One of these is the preview. Yeah, I'm showing you how to do it from up here, and I don't even know where to get it from up here. So I don't even know how to get it from up here anymore. I'm sure it's here somewhere, but I don't know where. Real-time preview, there we go. So under File, Real-time preview, you can choose which browser to look, to see your preview in, but I don't go there, I go to this little icon, which is the same thing. I just wanted to show it to you under there. Some people forget where icons are, or suddenly it doesn't show up. So then the preview allows me to choose a browser in which to see this, and I'm just going to use Google Chrome so I don't have to open another browser. Click on Google Chrome, and this is our web page. Right now, this is what we have as a web page. Very basic, very simple. At the top, I still have those little nav items. We brought in an image, H1, H2, 2 paragraphs, and a footer. But this footer doesn't seem to be necessarily at the bottom of the page. If you look at this footer, there's more underneath it. You see that? Where if my page were smaller, so, oops, sorry, I clicked that close. Let me go back to Chrome. If my page happened to be a little bit smaller, then I would be able to scroll up and down and think it's at the bottom, right? It kind of looks like it's at the bottom. But in reality, if I make my browser tall, you can see that it's not necessarily at the very bottom. There's more space there. So if this is going to be the footer, you kind of want your footers to always be not at the bottom of your material, but stick to the bottom of the web page. Does that make sense? So we're going to have to do something to this footer to force it to stick to the bottom of my web page. No matter how much material I put in here, I don't want it floating in the middle. I want it to go and be at the bottom. Okay? So in fact, as I make this bigger or smaller, that might shift in where you see it, but there's always a little space here. So I'm done watching this preview. The other thing I want us to see, let me see a bit more, is that as I move my thing in or out, my text seems to reset itself, and the width of my the width of my footer is from end to end, okay? But my photo, which originally we had told it to stay at 50 or 40 or 50% of my image, that does change, but it's always at 50% of whatever website size I am making it be, versus these things aren't changing. It's just my image is changing. Remember, we did that like the first day or something. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of what it is that we have at this point, so that as we keep making changes, we can compare. Okay, so I want to get rid of this. I'm going to close this little window because I don't need to preview anymore. In real life, I do keep that open all the time on another page. But here I don't. I'll give us a break in a minute, but first I want us to fix this footer to the bottom of my web page. Okay, so since we're all here in the CSS Designer and the footer, I want to add more conditions, so to say, more values, more properties to this footer. But for that, I need to uncheck my show set. Okay, so I'm going to click on uncheck my show set so that all my other possible properties are available now, so that I can add some more properties to it. Okay, so this is pretty crucial. If you're in show set, you're only seeing what you already added, but I want to add more stuff. So I'm going to uncheck that. And now I have everything available to me. So we have the layout, the text tags, remember all these different choices, the background tag. Let's go over to layout. And what we're going to do to this guy is we're going to go ahead and ask it to, let me see over here. I want to fix it to the bottom. I'm trying to remember right now where. Was it in here? I've been in this version so much. Background attachment over here. I want to fix it to the bottom. Okay, so basically I went all the way to I had to scroll all the way to find it. So here we have layout tab. Okay, there's all these different options here. This one here shows me my background, my text, my borders. But if in any of those, all I really need to do is to keep scrolling up and down and I see all of them. So I was in layout, ended up discovering that I might need to go to background. So if you click on background, here's the choice that I want. And in the choice that I want, I can go to background attachment. Okay, so click on this fourth little icon to find background attachment. And over here, right now it's set for scroll. So it goes up and down when you scroll. I'm going to save that and I'm going to say fixed. So over here, background attachment now says fixed. But this is for the background attachment of the footer, okay? Not for everything else, just for the footer. All right, I'm looking at the time. It's probably time for a break. Dorothy gave me a little reminder. So let's leave everything there for a minute. Let's take a break. Okay. So just so nothing disappears during our break, make sure to go to File, Save, Save All. And then we're going to go see what's happening to our background with this choice. If you didn't find it, once again, under the footer, disconnect the show set. Under the footer properties, choose your fourth icon, 1, 2, 3, 4, which pulls up all the background stuff. And then we went down the choices to background. And here there were 2 options, scrolled or fixed. And so we chose fixed. Okay. All right. Any questions before we take a break? I'm going to stop my share for a break.
I have a question.
Yes. Your sound was off, now on, now it's off. What's your question, Daryl?
Oh, you can't hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you, yeah.
I'm sorry, I took my finger off the space bar.
That's okay.
I changed my footer a lot. But one of the things I did, because I didn't like the black all the way across the page.
Yeah.
So I realize now that I did it wrong, but I set huge margins left and right.
Okay.
So when my page gets small, my footer becomes a stripe.
It gets tiny, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so what do I do to make it a small box that sizes with the page?
Yeah. So that's part of the whole resizing things, everything. That's it's not a quick answer. That's part of everything that you need to deal with. So you have, you know, that we need to treat that as a container and then give a size to that container and resize it in percentage. So we'll move into that later, but it's not a quick before the break kind of quick answer. Okay. But
okay.
Good question. Good question. I'm glad you did that. Remember, I told you guys to play around with it, and then playing around with it, he made a certain discovery. So we're going to talk about what he discovered when we come, not exactly when we come back, but in the next set of conversations, we're going to be talking about that. All right. Okay. Break time. It's 7:12. So 7:28, 27. We'll be back. Okay, 15 minutes. See you guys.
Sounds good.
Just so you know, I mute everyone always. So when I mute everyone, you can now do whatever noise you want. But if you want to stop your videos or your sound yourself, you're welcome to do that. Stop mine. Okay, I'm back. Taking all my little post-it notes. I put them everywhere to remind myself to turn on and off the recordings. Here we go. All right. Cool. So I'm back. If you guys want to trundle back and let me know you're alive. I see Robert. Yay. Hi, Robert. Okay. So a bite. A quick bite before I start talking again. I had forgotten to have lunch, so suddenly it's like I'm teaching. I'm like, I'm starving. So I made myself a quick. Maybe all that talk about salads and sandwiches and boxes and containers. All right. Is everyone back?
Talk about sandwiches. Do you know why you can't starve in the Sahara Desert?
No, why?
Because of all the sandwiches there.
That's a good one.
Thank you for the lightness. Yep. I was like, wait. Got it. Okay. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to start sharing again. This one right there. Okay. So the last thing we did was that we made our background for our footer fixed. Okay. So just really quickly to see the effect of that. And while people are trundling back, I'm going to go and check again. My preview, make sure to save first. I don't know. I think we saved before we left, but I'm going to save all again. I'm going to do a quick preview in Google Chrome. Oh, I thought I had left that background. Oh, here we go. Admit it. So here's my here's my page. Sorry, with the VDI it got, and see how now it's sticking to the bottom. So no matter what size I make it, I don't have all that space that I had before. Actually, this isn't working. So hold on. Hello, background fixed. Footer.
We can't see.
Oh,
Yeah, I think you're
sorry.
on
I'm sharing the
LinkedIn.
wrongs. Sorry about
There
that.
we go.
Thank you. All right. So I was saying that I was going to save. We had added a background fixed setting, which looks like this in my CSS right now. And so then I said, we'll go ahead and save that. And then let's go and do a preview. So I came over here and did a little quick preview. And in that page right now, I am seeing, I am noticing it's the footer isn't what I fixed, but the background of the footer is what I fixed. So by doing that, it's not achieving the background fixed effect that I was thinking of. It's the background itself that's fixed, which in this case doesn't matter because it's black. It's not the footer. So we actually need to do that a different way. So, and when I did the sample, we went off on break, but I hadn't looked at it. Now that I look at it, I'm noticing that that isn't the effect I wanted, but I'll show you. I'm going to close that again. Let me show you one more thing before I close this, and before we go change that. We hadn't talked about this at the very beginning. I quickly told you guys to write, and if you did do it the way I told you to give the name of the file. I told you of the site to call it whatever. And if you look at the tab here in Chrome in my preview, it says whatever, and that's because that's what we wrote in the head of the document. Under the title tag, we called it whatever. And so if yours still says whatever, because as you did what I told you, let me go and tell you how we can fix that. Because that title is what shows up in the tag, as in the tab, So let's go close this preview and let me go back to the source code. We did that at the beginning and then I forgot to have us point that out. So over here, instead of being in the style CSS, go to the source code. And then scroll up. It's not part of what we're seeing, but it's in the head, okay? This is the head of my document. One of the tabs was title. And the title tag, inside of it, it says whatever. That is what is showing up in the tab. So go ahead and click and select that. And let's call this one Diana's first web page, right? Or put your own name on it. And then you can save that. And then if I do a quick preview again, you'll see that my tab now up here is called Diana's first web page. So it's the only thing that exists in the head that we actually visually see in one way or another. And we see it because the tab that defines this page is that which we just named. Just so you know, and this whole conversation about accessibility or Google ranking your page or not, it really matters what you call what you title your page, what that tab is going to say. Sometimes you go to tabs and they have some nondescript little XXYZ code and stuff like that because people forgot to give it a good name. And that's considered one of the things that Google does care about. So you do want to put a good description there that defines exactly what is on that page. So if you wrote ruminations, or, you know, or poetry, or whatever else you wrote in there, that wouldn't define what's in here. You need to make sure that your titles and the headlines and things that you put in there, which are the first thing that Google, it's called search engine optimization. What you do to your website is put in your website things that the search engines are going to look for, so that then they can consider, oh, this is a well-described site. One of them is to really say that what's in your title or in your heading really do say what is the main thing about this page. So anyway, hopefully you've changed that and you've tested it, and it's just the title within the title HTML tags that used to say whatever that I changed to Deanna's first web page. You might have already given it another title, I don't know, but mine hadn't been changed since the beginning, so that's what I just did there. So now, before we continue, I want to talk a little bit more about what we did in the CSS, but first I want to create a few more of these navigational structural tabs that we've been talking about. Remember that I began the class by showing you a little bit about those structural tags. And the only two that we added at the end of class last week was we added the footer tag. And then we also added the nav tag and the header tag. So if you go over here to the DOM, and I know we've been using the CSS designer, so we've kind of minimized the DOM, but I'm gonna look at my DOM, and to do that, I need to click on it so that it pops up again. Okay, so I went down to the DOM that we were using a lot before, but since we've been in CSS, we haven't been using a lot now. So I'm just moving some things around. So I went down to the DOM, and if you double click, it goes away, it collapses, and then when you single click on it, it opens up again. And here in the DOM, we had the head and the body, and when you open up the body, this header and this footer right now are the only two structural tags. But inside of the header, if you open up the header tag, then there we put the nav tag, and the nav tag is also a structural one. Now, many times the header does include the tag, the nav, and many times it does not. Many times the nav sits on top of anything else. In this case, we have it inside. We can move it out. For now, it makes no sense, but I'm just pointing out that these are structural tags, which leaves all the other tags, our image, our H1, H2, and the two paragraph tags. They are kind of hanging out loose. They're not sitting inside of any structure. Does that make sense? They're not being held by anything that says you are an article or a section or something. So that's kind of what I want us to do now. I want us to create a tag and make all of this be a section. I'm trying to think what's the best way to show you how to do it. There's so many different ways to do it, but I like to go ahead and insert the section, and then I'm going to use the DOM to make sure that all the parts and pieces that I want into my section are in there. So let's go over here, and you can, we can do it in the code, or we can do it in up here. We can do it anywhere. All I know is that I want all the material in these tags, my heading 1, my heading 2, and my 2 paragraphs. I want them to all be included in a section tag. So I first need to add that section tag. I like to click in my source, right? So if I know that heading 1 is going to be my first tag that's going to be in my section, then I can go ahead and put my cursor right above it. And if I don't know how to find stuff in my code, then use the DOM to find it. So I'm going to click on my H1 right there. And when I look over here in my code, now my H1 is highlighted. So now I can click my cursor in front of my H1, not inside of it, but in front of it, and hit the return key a few times so that you make some space. And then when you made some space, then you put your cursor right in front of that. Does that make sense? I'm making some space so that my cursor is above my first web page. Now, I could select all of my tags so that my section already encompasses them when I create it, or I can first create my section tag and then put the stuff inside of it. Doesn't matter, chicken or egg, right? So if we assume that I'm going to be,
Sorry, real quickly, can
Yeah.
you smell this and tell me if it's gone bad?
no, in the middle of the class, no, it's fine. But we have a Tupperware that was not opened that had them. Too late. Okay, everyone heard me. Talking to my son who's making dinner. Okay, so put this cursor up here, and we're just going to insert it in a way that it'll be empty and we'll have to put the stuff inside of it, because right now that might be a simpler way to do it. So once my cursor is above the H1, I'm going to go over to my insert up here. Okay, and now you understand a bit more the difference between these tags up here, and then there's that line there, and then you have these sectional, right there, structural elements, sectional elements, which are the header, the nav, the main, the aside, the article, the ones that I've been telling you about. These are the ones that we're going to use, and I want to insert a section. So I'm going to go over here and click on section. So then this box comes up and says, where should I insert it? At the insertion point? And you can go, yeah, that's fine. Or if you had selected a whole bunch of text, it might have said, should we wrap around it? But we didn't. All we have is an insertion point. So that's what I want. By the way, this thing here that says class, that's the one that later we're going to use to differentiate one from another that Daryl had asked at the beginning. Okay, so let's say okay to that. So now if I look over here, I have a section tag. And in my DOM, I have a section tag. And over here, I have a section tag. And it has placeholder content that says content for a new section tag goes here. Now, I don't want to put anything new. I just want to put all the other tags inside of it. So I can just delete so that I don't have anything inside of my section. See that? And now what I can do is I can drag this little bit, the ending tag. I can cut it from here and I can paste it at the bottom. Okay, so that all the stuff that I want to be inside the section ends up being inside of it. Does that make sense? So I'm going to select, when I was done, I got rid of the content that was in there. And now I can select the entire little tag with both of its little carrots and stuff. And you can do a cut, okay, which you can do with Control X, or you can right click and say cut. So that disappears from there. And then I want to include my H1, my H2, and my 2 paragraphs, but not my footer. So when I'm done with the second paragraph and before my footer, I put my cursor in there and I say paste, which would be Control V, or I can right click right there and say paste. So now I've got my section ending tag at the bottom. So what happened over here in the DOM is you can see that now I have my header, my image is hanging loose, my section, and then if I open my section, H1, H2, and the 2 paragraphs are part of my section. Does that make sense? Now, all of this that I've just done is just purely structural, but it makes no visual difference to my page. Nothing has changed visually in my page, other than the fact that my structure is becoming more defined. And this is why these structural tags don't visually change anything, but if a reader has to come, a screen reader for a blind person has to come to read this page, it'll know that this place is where you'll find the main content of my information, of my whole web page. It knows to jump in there to see what's in there. Okay, same with Google. So that's what's important about having created the section tag. But it doesn't visually change. So a lot of people forget to put these in because nothing visually changes, but then they don't understand why their site doesn't get picked up by Google. So we've made a big change here. I'm going to go ahead and say save to that, file save all. And before I continue with that, because we're going to use these section tags and things to do something with it, I want to make sure that everyone has this set up and they did it correctly. I want to make sure that if you go to section in your DOM, H1, H2, and the 2 paragraphs are living inside of that section and that everything is working for you that way. So does somebody want to ask me any questions right now?
Yeah. My everything looks so different. I think I better share.
Okay, so let me stop my share. Okay, so what looks different? What changed?
Here, and I cannot get here HTML at all.
Okay, so go up to where you see the file name index.html, to the left, where it says, yeah, right underneath that, there's source code. Click on source code. That shows you your HTML.
Oh.
Okay.
And when I double click here, it doesn't go up here. It just stays here.
Oh, because you have them as 2 separate windows instead of as one window. Here, let me fix that for you. Let me request remote control, because that's something I can just do. I don't know how to explain right now. Okay, so basically this window right now is separate. See how it's kind of a floater? By having it separate like that, it doesn't do the thing. So I can just grab it and I'm going to insert it there. Okay, so now if you double click, it pops up, and I'm going to make it pop up less big. So let me grab the end of it. There we go. And so if you have the CSS designer turned on, it's kind of down there, and when you click on it, it pops up, and when you double click, it pops down. Now, when you double click and it pops down, I would like it not to pop up so big. I'm trying to, no, I didn't want to do that. I've inverted the position of them. That was not my intention. It's still taking over. I'm trying to get, I can't, my mouse, when you're in this remote control mode, I don't have as much control over my mouse, and I'm trying to just grab that little line there to make it smaller. But I can't, but that's okay. Doesn't matter, because the whole point is that if you need it, you want it big, and when you don't need it, you can collapse it. I think I have to take it out again because, yeah. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reset this, because the other way to fix that, if moving all of this, is to just say reset standard, and then everything kind of resets to where it originally was. I'm going to make it thinner again and make it fatter. So now you can double click to get rid of it and click one time to pop it up. So when things are off, say things are kind of messy like that or whatever, and you don't know how to fix things, then don't forget that resetting, going up here and doing a reset. If what you're doing is using standard, then reset standard. And then things kind of go back to the way they were at the beginning, and then you can move things around the way you want. So that's a good way to do that. Now you have your section tag, but your stuff isn't inside of it. And the section tag is above the header, and it should be down there. So one thing you can do, and I'm going to move my mouse myself, but in case anyone else is looking at theirs, notice that this section tag exists. It exists now. See over here, you see it, but it should have been under the header. So what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to undo, is you need to just grab it and drag it down to where you want it, which is right above H1, like that. Whoops. Nope, I ended up putting it inside. Command Z. This thing doesn't have so much control. I'm going to put it right there. Okay, so I moved it into the right place. Oh no, the image is supposed to be still under the image. So you can still move it up and then move the image above. Okay, and then now you can grab all of the other stuff and throw it in there. Now I'm going to undo that and let you do it.
Okay, thank you.
Control Z. and it's back in its wrong place, but it's up to you to move it around. Or you can copy paste from in here and then just put it down there.
Okay.
Go ahead and do it while I'm watching in case you run into trouble. Anyone else who needs help with getting their section to be wrapping around all of those tags? Ask me questions while she's working on hers.
So section's supposed to go here.
It actually is supposed to go under image, one more. So fine, but one more. You seem to have duplicated it somehow. So go ahead and do Command Z. Maybe you were holding down an option key or something.
I just
Can say, yeah. So, oh, yeah, you just deleted the image tag. So no, don't do that. Go ahead and undo. See how your photo disappeared? So say Command Z again.
Command Z not working.
Oh, see what I mean? Command Z is not reliable in this program. Go up to see if you can do edit, undo. Oh, Command. You're on VDI. You need to do Control Z. I forget that you're on VDI, so you're not on a Mac.
Okay, got it.
There you go. Now you have two sections, so do Control Z again, because somehow you managed to delete. There we go. Now we have the image again. See how your image had disappeared? Okay, now grab that tag and move it down under image. Yeah, and let go. Perfect. Now, H1, H2, paragraph and paragraph need to go in it, and you can do it how I did it in the code, or you can grab the H1 tag and drop it inside of on top of section, and you'll see how it goes in there. Yeah, let go. Yep, see how it went in? Now you can do the same thing to that, and you can drop it in that way. So that's, you guys, I'm showing another way through her doing it, another way how you can get things into the right place. So one was grabbing the end tag of the section and pasting it in the code, or using the DOM, she grabbed and dropped them over the word section, and now she has them. Now do notice that they're inverted in order. So you might need to change the order again. Yeah.
I don't always do
Yeah,
this.
there you go. Okay, so now it's the right.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions about what we did with her before she stops sharing? Play around moving with your stuff in the DOM. Okay, well, thanks for sharing them.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so one way or the other, her way or my way, we ended up with all these 4 tags inside of the section, right? So now what we can do is we can also, with CSS, we can do something to the section because it exists as a tag. So we can create a selector for it and make the section do the things, whatever it is that we want it to do. So let's head over to CSS Designer. And let's go to our selectors. And if you need to see them, you need to push down. We have only 2, H1 and H1 and footer. So what we can do now is we can create a new selector by pressing plus. And over here, if we weren't in the right place, it doesn't even show them that's just right section, because we want that section to be the what we're gonna style basically next in our CSS. We're going to style the section. So I went to the selectors in the CSS Designer. I clicked plus and I wrote section. Now, had I clicked inside of the section in the code, then I wouldn't have had to write it. It would have popped up for me. But since I didn't, then I had to write section. Now that section becomes a selector that I can start to style. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce my DOM because I need more space again. So I'm going to double click on the word DOM because I'm done using it for now. And now I have my section, and I'm going to move it up again. It's showing me the set of changes, and have I made any changes yet to my properties of my section? Nope. That's why I see nothing here. And if I go to read my CSS right now, I look at my CSS, I'm going to push this over and nothing's there. My section exists, but there's no properties in it yet, no values. Okay. But it does exist as a selector in my CSS because I created it. So now I'm going to go over here to properties, turn the show set off, and I'm going to go to background, and I'm going to give this whole section a background. So I'm going to give it a color. So I clicked on the 4th tab, and my background section is going to have a color now, the whole background color. And I'm going to make it be light-ish yellow. So over here on the left, I have to choose my kind of my general color. I can do that by dragging this up and down, or I can kind of click, click, click. I'm going to go around to the yellowishes right here. Okay. And then I can choose what tonality of that color I want. So this is the hue, and I'm choosing the hue, but maybe I want it to be a very bright, intense yellow or a very pale yellow. So up here, you get an eye. It used to be black, and now I can either choose a very bright, bright yellow for the background, which I don't want, or I can go and start making it darker yellow, which I would go down. But if instead of that, I want to make it paler, then I go left. Okay. So darker is down this way, and paler, like less saturated, is to the left. Okay, and then down and to the left is dark and pale. So that way you can get many different types of options for that yellow. So I can go and say I want a lightish yellow, and then you go, well, but I'd like it to be a bit greener. Well, then you have to go up here and keep changing that color to a lighter green or a lighter orange. Okay, so here you choose the color, here the saturation or the lightness of it. And when you're done, you made a color that you kind of like, then that down here is defined by its hex color. Then you can just kind of click away, and there you go. You've made a background for that portion, which in this case is just the section. Okay, so if I look over here, it's only the section that has a color to its background now. Okay, so has everyone found a color that they want to make for their section?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Taking a drink of water. There we go. All right. Notice that just like when we did the copyright, how all my text goes all the way to the end. So if you think about the box model, my content is all this stuff. The content of my section is everything. The content of my section is my heading 1, my heading 2, and the 2 paragraphs. And there's no end or no space between the content and the edge of it because I have not added what to it. What would I need to add if I would want some space between this yellow color and the beginning of my M and my B? What would I need to add?
Padding.
Padding.
Padding. Okay, we would need to add some padding to make some space. So let's go do that. So over here, we're still in the section. We're adding padding to my section. Okay, so over here in the oh, I'm in the wrong. Am I in the recording? I wasn't using my mouse. I was using, this whole time I've been moving the mouse that doesn't show you stuff here. I was in my sample. Okay, so here's my mouse. So in here, I'm gonna go ahead and look for layout. And under the layout tab, I can go over here and scroll down to here's margin and here's padding. So I'm going to go ahead and add some padding here again. I'm going to go ahead and click to the right and my top. I'm going to give it a little bit of padding on the top. See there? See how I get a little space on the top. I'm going to give a little bit of space on the left. So I'm going to go over here to the left and add a little bit of padding to the left. Okay. But the thing is that each one of these has to be set separately right now because this link here is disconnected. If I were to want to give the same padding all the way around, I could just click on this little link in the middle Okay, and then I could give the same padding to everything. So let's start by putting everything back to 0. Link this, and all I do is click. And now when I change the padding on the top, all my paddings change at the same time. See that? So basically I'm going to give 25 points of padding to the 4 sides. And if I look over here, I've added to all 4 sides a little bit of padding. Okay. Now it reads a little bit differently because this space seems different than that, and that has to do with the inherent padding or space represented by what the H1 gets. But for now, it's easier to first put in some padding to everything, and then you can unlink again, and then you can say, okay, I want less padding to the bottom, so then you pull that down again to maybe only, let me move it over, to the left, maybe move that, I need to see it. Move it down a little bit less so that I can make it look the same. So I'm going to give it 20 in the bottom, even though my left has 25, okay? Or maybe I can give it even a bit less. I think maybe more like 15 or 18 to the bottom. Okay, so for that you could either link or unlink. If I link again now anything I add will add to everything. So say I add 3 pixels to something, then everything will get 3 more pixels once it's linked. And when it's unlinked, then each thing will change independently. So I can actually go ahead and write 15 in there, and it won't affect the rest because it's unlinked. All right, so now I've given padding all the way around to separate this stuff from its background. Now, what if what I want to do is that I want this background to actually move to the right of this? What if I want this picture to actually be on the left and this stuff to be on the right? Does that make sense what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to have a picture on the left and all this text on the right. Before I move on to do that, did this work for you guys? Do you have your
Yes.
background with color, the padding? Any questions about that? No? Okay. So now we're going into the whole positioning of things. And notice, by the way, that if I were to want some distance between my section and my footer, that's where I would have to add margin. Right now, between my section and my footer, we have internal margins, which is the padding. So the ends of the content to the box has some space, but between these two, there's no space. See that? So if I were to want to separate these 2 elements, that's what margin would be. It's the space outside of my element. So let's go give this a try just to see what I mean by that. So let's give some margin to my section. So let's add a bottom margin. Okay, so between the margin of the section and the footer, I want a bottom margin here. I'm going to go to the bottom margin and I'm going to add some space. So see how I've added a little bit of space here? I'm going to add 50 pixels of space between my section and my footer. Does that make sense, you guys? Margin is external versus padding is internal. Okay, and then I have on the left side this photograph, and on the left side this section. And what I want to do right now is I want the photo to be on the left and the section to be on my right. So based on what I told you at the beginning of today's class, what do you think I could do? How do you think I could do that? Sorry, my dog is barking. How do you think I could do that? Move something to the right. What feature did I teach you about today?
Float.
Yeah, float. Thank you. It's nice to know you're listening. I know you are, by the way, you always answer. But there you go. So float. I can float this section to the right. Let's see what happens when I do that. Now, I'm going to go over here to the, make sure you're still in section. And over here, I'm going to scroll down. And under these three boxes, you see the word float. I can float left, float right, or get rid of a float. I want to float it right, so I'm going to click on float right. Okay, there we go. Ah, is it turned on? Yeah. Now for that to make any difference, this image would have to float left because this is on top of it now and is not letting this move up. So I need to create, what do I need to create to be able to position this picture? You guys tell me. If I want to float left this image, what do I need to create first?
Selector.
Yes, a selector. I can't modify this image. I have a tag for this image, but I don't have a selector. So I need to go over here and create a selector for my image tag so that then I can float that one left. Does that make sense? So if you click on the image and you go over here to selectors and say plus, then see how you have the image which is inside of the body. So it's easier to just click in there and get rid of body or hit your upper arrow. And that gives me the image selector. Okay, so if I look at my code, now I have an image selector. I don't want to leave anyone behind, but I want to make sure that you're seeing what I'm doing. I've created an image selector. And for now, all I'm going to do is scroll straight down and give the image a float left. If you're not doing it yet, just look at my screen for a minute and tell me what strange, weird thing just happened. The moment I gave my screen a float left, did you see anything really strange happen?
The footer's on top now.
What happened to that footer? Kind of weird. You see the footer? And let me, if I can undo, if I do command and control Z, there you go. It disappeared. So watch. The moment I give this guy a float left, boom. My copyright, which is supposed to be at the very bottom of my page, appears on the very top. Any idea why that's happening? Let me do a quick reminder. Remember that if these are 3 apples, when you move one to the left and one to the right, that bottommost one is going to do what? It's going to go blop, and it's going to float to the top, right? Does that make sense? My copyright was at the bottom. My footer was at the bottom. But since I applied a float red and a float right to my other elements, my copyright just blop, floated to the very top. Kind of weird, but that's what happened. Yeah?
Yeah.
Did anyone else have that happen? Did anyone else see that happen?
Yes.
Yeah? You got your little strange floating thing. So what I need to do is I need to go to the footer now. I need to fix that. And I need to clear the floats for this footer. So I'm going to go up to the footer. So in my selector, I'm selecting my footer. And I'm going to go over here and clear the floats. And I think I need to clear both. Yeah, the 3rd tab. And now it's back in its spot. It's kind of being pushed down. It's like I put a little anvil on it and said, hey, whoa, boy, key, stay down there, okay? Don't interact with these floats. You've got your own little section and you don't get to float just because the other guys are floating, okay? So I went to clear float. So I went to footer. I was still in background, in layout, but in case you didn't see it, scroll down And under the floats, there's a choice called clear. And I just cleared the floats from my copy. Now, if I get rid of it, then it's going to float up again. So I need to click on this little guy and clear that float. Okay. Now, up here, I'm having the problem that this isn't floating up there because it's so much bigger than this one. So it's trying to float, but this is in the way. You could only have two things float if they were the same size. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right now, I probably should have had us change the sizes of first so you could have seen the effect. But anyway, since I didn't, you need to understand. Imagine you have a big thing floating and another smaller thing floating. Well, you can't push that thing that's floating up any higher. So they're both still floating, but the big one isn't managing to get to the top because the other one is above it. So we need to make this being the section, be only 50% of my page, just like this photograph is only 50% of my page. Okay. So I'm going to go over to this section again, and I keep going because no one's stopping me to ask me things. So I'm assuming you're all following. Okay. So I'm going to go to my section, and I'm going to have to give this section a size. So I'm going to go all the way over here, scroll up to the top again of section layout. And I'm going to give a width to this section. And I'm going to give it a 50% width. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to choose percentage as my sizing. And I'm going to say 50. Was this not 50? Was this maybe 60 or something like that? I don't remember right now. I have to go and check. So see how now it became smaller and it's floating to the right because I told it to float right, but it's not clearing it. Let me go back into the source because the photograph, we had given it a size in the source. And I need to actually fix that. What we should do to the image is we should take all of this from here and give it its space and its size in CSS. But it does say 50%, so I need to see what's happening there. But anyway, look at, go to your source code, please. And the other day, I had to give our image a size. And I said, make it 50%, right? To this image, 50% width, height. Now in reality, we don't want to make anything be a size in code, in HTML. Where we want to give it a certain size and it's going to be in the, where we want that to happen is we want that to happen in the CSS. So I'm actually going to go into my code and I'm going to get rid of width and height. This is something we did the first day and we didn't know yet about CSS, but this is not the right place to be styling my photo. So I'm going to actually get rid of that, select it in the code. You have to. And if you don't know where the code is, click on the photograph and then the area, the whole line of code with photos, with the image is going to be selected. And then click in there and go from the W of width to the ending quote marks there of the 50%. And then go ahead and hit delete. When you hit delete, that photo goes back to being huge. Remember it was huge? So now it's taking over. Is everyone with me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dorothy, how are you doing? Vivian, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm following.
Leland, everyone, you're all okay? Okay, all right. So now we're left with a huge photo, but we do have an image tag in my CSS, right? So I'm gonna go back to my style so I can start reading. Here it is, my image tag in my CSS. All I've told it is to float left, but I haven't told it what size to be. So this is the right place to change this tag. And so what I'm gonna do right now is I am going to give this image, and we're gonna see that this isn't necessarily the right way to do it either in this, but let me explain because this is the only image we have right now. So it's fine, but if we had two images, this would apply to all images, right? So for now, we're going to do it to the image so that I can show my point, but later we'll discover that really we should be doing this to a container for the image, but I haven't given the image a container yet. So give this image the width, and in here, we're going to again choose to give it a percentage, and we're going to make this be 50%. I know what's happening. There's the inherent margins that are on the side right now that are not letting me do this. So let's give this one a 40%, and then we're going to go give, or 45%. Let's do that, 45%. And that gives us a bit more space. See the little bit of space here on the left and on the right? That's actually working right now, and that's why I don't want us to necessarily, I don't want to explain that whole part yet. So 50 and 50 wasn't working because part of my space was taken by these pixels there, which I believe are probably a couple of pixels on each side. I don't know right now. So by giving this a width of 45%, plus having this section be 50%, now I'm having my floats work because they're both smaller than that 100%. So then this one floated left like I requested it to do, image float left. And this box right here, which is my entire section, I asked it to float right. And so it went to the right side of the page. Does that make sense? And if I scroll down, there's my margin. And at the bottom, I have my copyright. I want to have a save, and then I want to have questions, or it didn't work for me, or what's happening, can you explain better? I want people to start telling me how it is or isn't working for you guys, and if you need any more support. Nope.
Are we not supposed to be floating or wrapping the text around the image? Mine did when I floated the image to the right.
You floated the image to the left, and what happened with
No,
the
to
text?
the right. I floated it to the right way back when we were just starting the floating.
Okay.
I floated it to the right, and it wrapped, the text wrapped around it, or
well, there
so there's no white space.
There shouldn't be any let me share your screen with me, because right now this image is outside of the section, so it shouldn't be affecting the text, at least how I set it up. Let's see how you set it up.
Okay,
show me your screen.
Yeah, mine isn't very good right now, but okay.
That's all right, but that's why I want you guys to share, to straighten you out.
Okay, I have to.
I know, I've taught this class in person so many times. I know that not everyone has their site looking just like mine, trust me. But if you're doing it on purpose, that's one thing. But if you're doing it and not knowing what's happening, then that's another thing. Okay, so right now we have.
It looked better before when it floated to the right.
No, that's fine.
Now
So right now you have. Let me actually have control so that for the parts that I'm just pointing out, my mouse will point things out so people can see. You can do the work, but okay. So now my mouse is on. So if we look over here at the image selector that she created, she gave it the right width, okay? And if we scroll down, and I'm not sure if my scroll is gonna work. No, I can't seem to scroll. Can you scroll down, please? Yes, scroll a bit more till we see the floats. Okay, so here she gave it the float left. What you're saying is that when you gave it a float right, it seemed to be working better. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
But either way, left or right, that's not what seems to matter. What seems to matter right now, what's mattering right now, is that this section hasn't been resized. So they are blending one into the other. The section is still the full width. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and have you go to your section. So go click up here on your section. Yeah, and let's go check out. The easiest way to check out what happened is always to just show set. Let's see what you do have on your section. And it seems like you haven't floated right. Yeah, your section isn't floated right yet.
You
So
want me to check the box?
well, yes and no, because right now you're in the floats and I'm looking at your float and you didn't float your section right. Do you see down here?
Yeah.
Can you go float your section right? You're supposed to float it right. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, now that's what happened to everybody else. So.
Yeah.
but the section, I floated the image. The image.
Image left, section right, but the section hasn't moved right yet. But why is that? Because it probably is too big. So now scroll up and let's look at the section size. So no, down here in under section. Yeah, go over here and scroll. Yeah, scroll down. So you have to see the top part. Yeah, keep going up, 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 up. Or when I say up, I mean the other way, then down, down, down. I don't know. Some people have the mouse going up or down to the top of this section. Yeah. So you have to get to the top of this section. So you need to get to the size. Yeah. So keep there, width. So go to width. Yeah. And then give that one 50%. There you go. So now they're side by side. Okay. Now, except for that one. And so that one, now this took its place and I'm like, oh, where should I go? So now it's going over there. So what you need to tell this one is ignore those two floats, clear floats. So now go up to the footer in your selectors, up at the top in your selectors, go to the footer, choose your footer, up, 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 yeah. And now go down to the floats and say clear floats. So go, yeah, you're fine. Now scroll down until you see after all these free boxes. Yeah, keep going. But you went a bit too much. It's right under those boxes, so back up. Yeah, there's the floats. So you need to clear the float. So the second choice, which is clear, it says float and then clear. It's the third one. You need to clear both floats. Yeah. Whew. Good. Now go scroll down and see if your footer went to the right spot. Yep. There it is.
Okay.
And now your stuff is looking like mine.
Can I
Okay.
share my screen now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Don't forget today to take a big old screenshot of everything and send it to me. Okay. So what I'm seeing here that's happening to you is that in your section, instead of putting percentage, you put 50 pixels width. If you go to your width, your top choice there, move your mouse up. Up, 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 up. Yep, what? Right there, width, it says 50 pixels. See to the right? 50 pixels. It needs to be 50%.
How do I get percent?
Type a percent.
Okay.
Delete the PX. And the percent is, I don't know, what's the percent? Above the 5, shift 5.
Oh, yeah.
And then hit return.
Better.
Mm-hmm. Now your image is really tiny. So we need to go find your image. So go to your selector for image, which you left as body image. So you might want to make sure to double click one more time so that name highlights and take the body part out of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, now click away. And now the image up there, again, you told it to be, I believe, 45 pixels or something. So go back and do that again and change that to 45%. So it's just the unit of measurement that you were using. Yeah, there you go. Choose that to be percent. Well, try again. One more down. Perfect. Now you've got it. Okay. Great. Now you have some other stuff happening there, but you have all the floats and everything are fine. Cool. Thanks. Anyone else who needs to share their screen? Go ahead and give us a save. Tim, how are you doing? You got all your floats and all your percentages and everything running?
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I just followed along with Dorothy's and figured out how to get the footer back down to the bottom. Cool. And that's kind of where I'm at with it right now.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Vivian, how are you doing? Yours is looking kind of like mine. Oh, I see you're trying to speak. Right. Looks like sounds. Say that again. Well, you can type into the chat. Okay. Right. It occurs to me that by now you've seen 2 examples of how to do that, and if you still need help, you'd be asking me for help. But if you're not asking me, I'm going to assume that you got it. So I want to do a little bit more work in here, but I think that this was a good example of showing you how things can be moved around solely with CSS. We didn't change our, all we did was we added one tag, we said section, and then that section we styled in CSS, okay? So in CSS, you pick up any tag that exists and you do things to it, and that's what makes it move around and change. Let's do one last one. I know it's 8:26, got 5 more minutes. Let's do one more, which is the whole body. I want my whole body, which would be everything. Doesn't the body encompass everything? Every single thing we're seeing is in the body, right? But we might want to give that body something. We might give the body, which would be this kind of thing here. Oh, I'm saying this kind of thing here without sharing. Sorry. I caught it before you had to tell me. Chris was about to tell me, I'm sure. I caught it before you had to tell me.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. My share button is on the side of the screen. There we go. Okay. So we're going to give this background thing can have it. Right now it's white by default. The text, the font is all one font by default. We haven't worked on text yet. All we've done is learn how CSS modifies our HTML by assigning selectors. But the body selector is the most basic, important one. If we go back to source code for a minute, the body encompasses everything. If I open my DOM and I close body here, body is everything. So whatever settings I put in body are gonna go ahead and color the entire set of contents. But, and this is important to understand, that this is where the whole cascading style sheets takes over, where if I say that my body background is going to be, say, I don't know, blue, then that would be the background for everything until I define a background for another element, because that would be overriding or superseding that which was said before. So this time we did it a little bit differently, and that first we established a color for my section background and a color for my footer background. So when I color the body, it's gonna color all the stuff that's now white, but it's not gonna overpower my first web page, because levels wise, the body is lower, so to say. It's in the whole cascading style sheet situation, it is more basic, and the sub elements, the ones that are the child elements, are going to override the setting that this one has. So I'm going to go ahead and create a body selector over here, and instead of writing it in like we did before, just to remind you again how to do it would be if you just click into the body selector right here and say plus, then it will say body. That's already the one I want. So that's enough for me to then say return. So if you, I'm going to close my DOM again. And all I'm going to do with the body is just for us to be able to see it, is we're going to go ahead and also give it a color. So I'm going to go to background and give it a background color again. Give it anything other than what you've given it. So I'm going to give it some kind of color from this photograph. So a cool thing to show you is that if I don't know how to define one of these colors, I kind of matched my yellow here of my flowers, but I guessed at it. But there's another way. I want to maybe pick up one of these colors from my background. I can use these little eyedropper that's here And how I got this, by the way, I'm sorry, is I clicked on the background color. I'm going to click here and define a color for it. But I go pick up this little eyedropper, and then I can put it over this photograph, and I can kind of click there and see how a gray was chosen. Or I can move it over here and choose an even deeper gray, a dark gray right there. Or, you know what I mean? And there we go. So I'm going to go with a dark gray for my background right now. So when I click away, there it is. My background of my whole web page has a gray that came from one part of this photo. And I might like it or not, but if I don't like it, all I need to do is click in there again, click on the eyedropper again, and then go choose maybe a lighter gray. And so I'm gonna try that. And the good news is that we might look at it as gray, but really it's not gray. It's kind of a bluish gray, but it would be very hard to find that. But by using the eyedropper, I get near enough, and then maybe I go, well, I want that, but I want it lighter. So then you can just move it around, but at least you'll know that you're in the same color tone. So when I say okay to that, this gray should match kind of nicely with this imagery. Had I done that to this yellow, then that yellow might be a little bit more in tune. I just did it by eye, not too badly, but I might want to go and change that. But this gray, that's a cool way to kind of, and if I don't like it, you can keep changing it until you find one that you like. Well, I want to go with one of the lighter, no, one of the middle tones of gray. I'm going to go choose a middle tone-ish tone of gray right now and click away. So that's a darkish, but not one of the most dark ones. So that defines my background color. It doesn't define my texts or anything else right now. So see how all the words that used to be my portfolio, contact, whatever, now that stay black, they're hard to see. Right now, I'm going to leave it that way. I'm going to save all. I'm going to do one final file preview to see what it is that we've done. So here's our little website. I need to make it big enough so that these fall to the right or to the left of each other. And this is what we have going right now. We have a couple of boxes that are floating over each other. We have the navs that is still hard to read because now it's black over gray. We have a photograph, another box, a copyright that I made a bit of space. So that's where we're at right now, okay? Once again, if you want to play around, you can save what you've got going here and play around differently, but leave this one at this level so that when we start again next week, we're starting all at the same spot, okay? So that we're all starting at the same page versus having someone moved on and not have the same things. Okay, time to go. Anyone have any other questions before I stop sharing? No? Okay, they can, there we go. All right, anything else, you guys? Nope.
Thanks, Dan. See you next
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See you guys. Keep
Good
practicing.
night.
Diana.
Good
Take care.
night. Good night. Good night.
Oh my God. Sorry.